If you are under a lot of stress, and especially if you have a neurodivergent nervous system, rumination, overthinking, like thinking about the same thing over and over to the point that it really wigs you out could be a problem. I had a major rumination episode on Thursday morning, and I want to share with you how I got out of it and what I know that can help you with rumination. When we get in these heavy overthinking, over inner critic, especially if your inner critic is going just full on terrorist with you, that's a sign of dysregulation. And if you're anything like me, one of the things is like we try to do all these mental things to get out of it, but you can't get out of that dysregulation with a cognitive thought. And honestly, this is something I was reminded of by a dog trainer. So I want to tell you about a foster dog I had a couple of years ago. The cutest little black and white, half Boston Terrier, half French Bulldog young boy came to be my foster dog and was dumped at a shelter near Dallas with one eyeball hanging out. I have the pictures. I will not show you. The first thing we did was have his eye removed and had his surgery. And then transport drove him down and we picked him up and he came to my house. Now, I have had many foster dogs and I have had many dogs of my own. And this little dude, I knew that my own two big boxer dogs needed some time and that foster dogs need decompression before they warm up to the rest of the family. And so I knew to do some separation time. And after about a week, this dog and my dogs were still not behaving, kind of like my hair is not behaving. Gotta fix that. I know. It's really important. And I was starting to get really stressed. I was starting to get really sad. There was other stressful things going on in my life, but I was really starting to wig out. And I ended up talking to this dog trainer, and he reminded me of something that when we are completely dysregulated, we cannot learn something new, because I was frustrated that this dog wasn't easily trainable. He reminded me that dog has been through some serious trauma. So this little dog, I was trying to get to learn new tricks and to learn the new ways of being in our house, and his nervous system was so dysregulated. And this trainer wisely reminded me that you can't learn a new trick when your whole being is dysregulated. And so the first step has to be getting out of dysregulation. So with our dog, my trainer said he probably needs 2 months of decompression alone time. And I had never had a dog that took that long, but it just depended on the amount of dysregulation. And it did take about 3 months before that dog was ready to be adopted out. It did take about a month before him to be settled in with our family. And so we are not all that different from those dogs when we are experiencing dysregulation. And a lot of times dysregulation and the stress in midlife that it comes from is not necessarily visible, or the event is over, but the dysregulation or the continued stressors that midlife people are going through, we have got to A, rest, but B, we've got to notice the dysregulation so that it doesn't take over. And no shame if it does. Really, it just happens. That's biology, babes. So yeah, when you're in a dysregulated state, our body is not going to be open. It's really hard to lead ourselves. And so breathing is another thing that I do to get regulated and centered. Breathing and walking. How simple can I let it be? I don't need a whole nother to-do list. Breathing, walking, and shaking. Even my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, last night I was laying in bed, shaking my arm. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, my arm and shoulder feel really tight. And I didn't want to go to bed with that. And I wanted to shake it out. If you're in midlife, all the transitions in midlife can be very traumatic and overwhelming and discombobulating. And all the perceived identities we have can begin to rupture, relationships change, career change, role changes, physical changes. All these things can be really disruptive and dysregulating. There's two things. One is you can't change that state from a cognitive place, which means you have to do something to nurture and regulate your body. Something as simple as taking a walk. I do a lot of just wiggling around. I wouldn't even call it dancing. I like to nap, but a lot of times the nap is really just it's not really regulating. It can create some rest, but we need to move some of this energy out of us. So you don't have to be hardcore, but allowing yourself to shake out some energy, walk off some energy, be in nature, those kinds of things is really important. Get away. So get away from the areas you normally are. Get away from the screen. Get away from your desk. Look, hi, honey. We're talking about dog training. Don't you drink my smoothie. So that's the first piece. And the second piece is, so I come from a parts modality where we have a core self and we have parts. Our parts can either be like the wounded inner child, really under the surface level, those that really tender parts. And a lot of times those are shoved way down. And then we have these upper layer parts. We have the parts that like to disassociate and numb through various behaviors. And then we have a lot of protective parts that we call managers. And these managers try to control, they try to fix those kinds of things. And a lot of times when I get in a rumination episode, for whatever reason, I think on Thursday, it was because I took something somebody said. I don't know why. It just hit me, not the wrong way, but I overthought it. And then I did not sleep well and my frozen shoulder was killing me. And so the combination of the pain and the lack of the sleep just sent me into a rumination spin. And I was trying to solve it from that protective mode. And when you are feeling like my poor little dog was, just overwhelmed, physically beat, bruised, not only the trauma of leaving his home, but whatever happened, all of that was traumatic. Just because you're removed from the situation doesn't mean that things are automatically going to be okay. And so here I was doing all this without really trying to physically intervene and discharge my nervous system. I was trying to fix it like with mindset work or thinking something new. There are times when A, our body is dysregulated, and B, these emotional parts or these really hardcore, mean inner critic parts are trying to control us. And I know that they have benevolent intent, but while it's happening, it feels really self-abusive. Sit on. Let me see if I can show this little book. I'm sitting here by my bird feeder, like 3 feet from it, 2 feet from it. Get there. Yeah. Dysregulated overthinking. So the first thing we got to do is we call it change our state, right? And I'm not talking a massive change of state, but a changing of a physical state, moving out the energy with a walk, a dance, go into your car and scream and don't hurt yourself, but get some physical movement in there. And then the second piece is we've got to step back in and re-lead these parts. So we don't want to shove these parts of us that are hurting and need our attention back into the closet, into the corners, into the recesses, because that just leads to more dysregulation. We call it just getting some space. And even when you are in an aroused state, you can say to these parts, I need everybody back off and give me some space so I can get back to center. And you don't have to be in this holy Buddha centered mindfulness state. You just need the tiniest bit of love and compassion. The disassociation parts are fear-based, and so are the controlling parts, but you realize even your fears mean to protect you. But when they're leading, it's not effective. So we need to get back into this. In IFS, we call it self-led. We want to create a self-to-part connection. And before we can create a self to part connection, we have to cultivate some what we call self energy, or you can say cultivate some heart energy, cultivate some love energy. We need to create just enough regulation so that we can it's like having a handrail, something to hold on to while you're wobbling. You don't have to stop wobbling, but something to hold on to while you're wobbling that is spacious and loving, that doesn't necessarily need to fix you, but it actually does. Something that's compassionate. If you can recognize you have a disassociated system inside your being, that you have a managerial protective system inside your being, and that whether or not your body is regulated or not, right? Am I dysregulated and disconnected, or am I connected and open? And these ruminations don't happen when we're open and connected. So the goal when you're ruminating is to change your state through something physical and then gently try to reconnect with your love system. One of the things that I've been doing while I do really deep inner difficult work and while I face difficult realities is I also have a practice it's a version of what Liz Gilbert does with Letters from Love, where I have a very specific journal. That journal I have a whole bunch of hot pink pens, and in there, focus on love. I'm really nice to myself, and I develop and practice conversations of kindness and love with myself and all my parts. My parts get to say their piece in my other journals. They get to say their piece in my practice, but I have a very intentional, if you were lifting weights and you went and worked out all your legs, but you never worked out your arms. And so this is a very specific exercise that I'm doing to build synapses and mental muscle memory of love and positivity and feel good and kindness. And it's different for me from when I used to do all that while ignoring the difficult experiences. One was bypassing. And yeah, it was building good synapses for focusing, but it was also building synapses for the incapacity to deal with difficulty. And my goal is to have a system, mind, body, spirit, cognitive, physical, everything, that is able to both create and cultivate, but also is able to be realistic and hopeful and strategic when things are humanly hard. I hope this helps.